In this video, we are going to go over how to create, define, and configure a CAERO4 entry for MSC Nastran. Now, we are going to be using a web application that's available at theengineeringlab.com. If you come to this page, click on this link, free trial, fill out the form, you go ahead and get access to this web app that we're using today. This example that you see on the screen, this Nastran model, is from the MSC Nastran Aeroelastic Analysis User's Guide. Let's go ahead and track down where this example is located. So this example is going to be this one, 3 degree of freedom, airfoil, and fuselage. If you scroll down, we have a diagram of what this example looks like. So if you want to be literal here, if you rotate this to the side like you see here on the screen, this is the perspective. We're looking at that Nastran model from the XZ plane. So this model is in the XZ plane. This is how you look at it. So right now, if we look at it from the top, this is what the CAERO4 looks like. Okay, now let me see what else we have here on my to-do list. Okay, so assuming you have the free trial of the web app, you would come here, and then you go to the viewer, web app, and then you select and upload the Nastran model. And then for this model, you have to click on fit model here on the left, and this is what this example looks like. You notice that in this example we have 4 strips. Let's go ahead and turn off the coloring. You can see that we have a dashed line here. This dashed line is going to represent the quarter chord. And then here, let's go ahead and turn off the coloring for the control surfaces. We have another dotted line. This is going to represent the hinge line. And then if you want to display coloring for control surfaces, you will mark this checkbox, and that's how you manipulate the display, at least for the CAERO4 entry. So now one of the biggest questions is how do you create a CAERO4? If you go to the pre button here, so that would be this button here on the bottom left, look for PAERO4, click this row, click create entry, and then after that, you look for CAERO4, you click here, create entry, and then you fill out all the inputs here. Make sure to select the PAERO4 you created a moment ago. So again, you create the PAERO4, you fill out the inputs, you create a CAERO4, and then you fill out the inputs. Here, I'm not going to go through each input because that could easily make the video 2 hours long. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to modify the existing configuration. Now let's go ahead and look here. One of the first questions you might have here is what does each input do? If you click on display descriptions, you get descriptions of what each input do. So here, if I look at the LCIRC field, this is related to the B and beta values for each Mach number. I'm not going to go through each input value. I'm just going to go over the input values that influence the appearance, the shape, or the geometry of the CAERO4 entry. So if we look here, we have this table. This is going to describe where your hinge line, where control surface is. This is going to define the gap between the chord and the control surface. Just in case you do want more information about these inputs, you would go to the MSC Nastran Quick Reference Guide, and you will look for, in this case, maybe PAERO4. You go to this entry, you read through all the documentation that we have here. One thing I do on a regular basis is I look through the remarks. I read and see, okay, what does this input value do? What does this other input value do? What are the limits of the values I use, and so on and so on. So here, say we've already read the documentation, and now we're ready to modify where the hinge line, the control surfaces are. These values are going to be fractional values. So suppose I want to modify the control surface. I will modify this column, DOCI. So instead of 0.66, let's go ahead and use maybe 0.7. And you can see after a few moments, this is going to control the hinge lines. So let's go ahead and turn off the coloring here. Let me go and see what we have here. Right, so in blue, we have the hinge lines. So before we were using 0.66. So right now, this is the location of the hinge line before. And then after I use 0.7, we notice that the hinge line has moved. So that's what the DOCI column does. Now, what does this second column do? If you look here, this is the distance of the control surface divided by the strip chord. So here we're using 0.1. Let's go ahead and make that 0.2. So if you use 0.2, now your control surface is even larger. And let's go ahead and display the control surfaces right now. So this is the control surface we modified. Let's go ahead and change that back. Let's go ahead and modify this other control surface, and we'll go ahead and maybe make that 0.3. So now we have 0.3 here. Let's go ahead and make that 0.1. Now the third column gap, OCI, this is going to be the gap between the chord and the control surface. So let's go ahead and make that maybe 0.02 for this strip. You can see what the gap looks like there. So that's how you modify the PAERO4 entry. Now here we have values for 4 strips. Say you want to use 5 strips. This is where we then jump to the CAERO4 entry. In this column, and let me look here. Am I looking at the right? Let me look here. Let me look back at the PAERO4. I lost my bearings here for a moment, so let's see if I can reorient myself here. Okay, so I'm looking for a value that specifies the number of strips. Oh, okay, I see what's going on. So normally, what you would do is you would come here and you would say you want 4 strips, so you type in 4 here, or you want 2 strips, so you would type in 2 here. And now if you look at the update, I have 2 strips. Here I use 4, and then I get 4 strips. But here what I did instead is I said, hey, use a specific AE fact entry, and I think it was AE fact 14. So here what I'm saying is use a specific list of divisions. When you use end span, that creates an equal width. It creates equal strips. It creates strips with equal widths, if you will. But here we say, you know what? Let's just use a specific list of widths. So AE fact 14. So right now one is one division starts at 0, then it ends at 0.25, then it starts at 0.25. Here, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and make these, let me look here. Let me make this 0.6. So you see the change in the strip. So before, and these are fractional values, by the way. Strip 1 started at 0. The next strip started at 0.25. The next strip started at 0.6. The next strip starts at 0.7. And then the final strip ends at 1.0. So here, if I want to, I can make that 0.5. You see the strip changes in a moment. So alternatively, let's make that 0.6 for now. Alternatively, instead of using a list of values, you can just go ahead and say, just use equal width strips. Here I've supplied 4, and now I get 4 here. What does X1, Y1, Z1 do? If we look at the, let's see, I think it would be the CAERO4 entry. A CAERO4 entry is going to have a diagram of what the different points are. You'll notice I have 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and 0.4. We have to specify 2 points, 0.1 and 0.4. X1, Y1, Z1, this represents the X, Y, Z coordinates of 0.1. So look what happens when I modify the X coordinate. Let's go ahead and make that maybe negative 1.4. So now you can see our CAERO4 entry is skewed. Let's go ahead and revert that to negative 2.4. Let's go ahead and modify 0.4. So 0.4 would be this point here on the top right. Let's go ahead and make that negative 1.4. So now the other side is skewed. So we have negative 1.4. Let's go ahead and revert that. Now, once you've defined 0.1 and 4, you have to specify I'll call it an extrusion number. So from 0.1, how far do you walk? How long is this edge to 0.2? And then same for the other side. From 0.4, how long do you walk? How far do you go until you're at 0.3? Those values are controlled by x12 and x43. For x12, suppose I make the length 12. So now this edge is going to be 12. And now what about the other edge? We'll go ahead and make that 12 also. Here we're using units of length of feet. So before the CAERO4 entry was 6 feet along the chord, but now we have 12 feet along the chord. I can revert that to 6. And now suppose you want to use 5 strips. And here, just to confirm this configuration is okay for Nastran, you can click on inspect. This Nastran model was working before this exercise. So if I made a small modification, I expect the inspection to also work. So here, if we look at the status message, it says complete. That means the Nastran model is okay. It can run successfully. Now, suppose we make a mistake. Suppose I type in 6 here. And you notice one thing. Number one, because I have not supplied enough data, the preview is blank here on the right. Now, look what happens when I try and run Nastran. I will get an error saying, hey, you're missing data. You have to provide the data. And here, magically, it still worked. But here, what I'm missing, let's go and see what I was expecting to happen here. If I go back to the PAERO4 entry, well, I was expecting to happen here. I've only supplied data for 4 strips, but here I've asking for 6 strips. So here, let's go ahead and do this. Let me supply data for at least 6 strips. So if I come here to the PAERO4 entry, let's go ahead and add 2 additional rows. So let's go ahead and add zeros for these. And if I look at the preview, now I have a preview. I get 6 strips. The first 2 strips have information for the control surfaces. And for the other strips, they're all the values are 0, so there are no hinge lines or gaps or control surfaces. Okay. So if you want, you can click on inspect again, and I expect Nastran to run just fine during this inspection process. Okay, perfect. So that looks okay. All right, then let's go ahead and look at a few things here. So if you want to display the aerodynamic grid points, you would mark this checkbox for this row. Aerodynamic grid points. The grid points are located on the 25% chord line, which would be this green dotted line. If you want to look at the identification numbers, you will mark this checkbox. And here we see what the IDs are for the aerodynamic grid points. Okay, I think that's pretty much the end of the CAERO4 entry. Let me leave you my contact information. So here, just in case you have a question, if you have feedback or a comment, you can contact me here. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. So with that, I'll stop here. And as always, thank you for watching.